them. This is not a nanny state. This is not communist bloody China. This is Australia. And this is what you're doing. You're shutting down parents' rights over their children constantly, day in, day out. And that has to stop. Don't do this to the Australian people. Give them the right to have their say. And the Albanese government said we're going to be open and honest and accountable. That's one thing that I've never seen in this parliament is accountability. It is just ridiculous, and I hope that people understand that. You're the worst government I've ever seen, and stop taking over control of the people and telling the people how they should run their life. You go to your meetings, you're outside in the public, you tell the people one thing, and then you act totally different on the floor of Parliament because the majority of Australians don't know what happens in this place. They don't know how you vote, what you vote for, and they don't know really what you stand for. Half the time I don't even know what the hell you stand for because I don't believe it's in the best interests of this country or the Australian people.
All right, Australia, strap yourselves in, because this one starts the way all great parliamentary moments do, with a stack of paper still warm from the printer, a clock ticking louder than Big Ben, and a Senate chamber that looks like it's accidentally wandered into an episode of a political sitcom. You can almost hear the collective sigh when Senator Andrew Bragg clears his throat, eyes the government benches, and politely sharpens his questions like a chef preparing sashimi. Across the room sits Senator Penny Wong, calm, composed, and wearing the expression of someone who knows she's about to be asked something that sounds simple but absolutely refuses to stay that way. Real quick before we roll the footage, if you're enjoying this content, do me a huge favour, hit that like button and smash subscribe. Over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. Don't be one of them. It's free for you and it helps us out more than you know. Already clicked? You're awesome. Let's get into the video.
Into that. But you're more worried about shutting them down. Why? Because you want to control what they see, and that's why the misinformation, disinformation bill is all about control. Digital ID is about control. You only want them to see what you want them to see. You take the control out of the parents' hands. Parents should be the ones to decide. Not only that, social media, what about the kids who benefit from it? Which I believe is possibly the majority. But you want to take that away from them, what they can actually access. What about all the good things that they could be watching? And you want to take that away from them. This is not a nanny state. This is not communist bloody China. This is Australia. And this is what you're doing. You're shutting down parents' rights over their children constantly, day in, day out. And that has to stop. We are going to support this inquiry to take it up to February next year. And what I'm saying here also, it is indicative of the politicians, both Labor and the Coalition. You go to your meetings, you're outside in the public, you tell the people one thing, and then you act totally different on the floor of Parliament because the majority of Australians don't know what happens in this place. They don't know how you vote, what you vote for, and they don't know really what you stand for. Half the time I don't even know what the hell you stand for because I don't believe it's in the best interests of this country or the Australian people. Stop pushing legislation, everything through in this parliament just because we're coming to the end of this sitting term. Don't do this to the Australian people. Give them the right to have their say. And the Albanese government said we're going to be open and honest and accountable. That's one thing that I've never seen in this parliament is accountability. It is just ridiculous, and I hope that people understand that. You're the worst government I've ever seen, and stop taking over control of the people and telling the people how they should run their lives. Governments were set up for three things: the economic stability of the country, the rule of the law, and the Constitution. That's adhere to the Constitution. Get out of telling people how to run their lives and their businesses.
Now picture this moment not as a dry policy debate, but as theatre, because that's what it becomes. The bill lands with all the grace of a dropped meat pie, barely an hour old, and suddenly everyone's expected to chew, swallow and vote before they've even checked what sauce is on it. Bragg, doing that very Australian thing of sounding polite while clearly meaning business, basically says, hang on a tick, we're meant to be the Senate, not a drive-through. And you can almost hear the ghost of parliamentary procedure coughing politely in the corner. The parody magic kicks in when the conversation turns to children, the internet, and who exactly is holding the remote control. Parents, according to common sense, might think it's theirs. Governments, according to this moment, seem to be peering over the couch like, just checking what you're watching there, champ. And suddenly the word control is bouncing around the chamber like a footy that no one wants to admit they kicked. Not control as in evil mustache-twirling stuff, but control as in that awkward, uncomfortable question, where does guidance end and overreach begin? Penny Wong listens, nodding in that measured way that says, I hear you, while also saying absolutely nothing out loud just yet. Meanwhile, somewhere far away in the lower house, Anthony Albanese is blissfully absent because the Senate is the upper house and he's got question time elsewhere. In parody terms, this turns Albo into a sort of offstage character, like the dad who isn't in the room but whose rules are still being argued about. He said no screens after 9, someone insists, while everyone else debates what exactly counts as a screen. The script practically writes itself when the topic shifts to bullying. Bragg's line of questioning, echoed by the spirit of the transcript, pokes at the irony with surgical precision. If bullying is still a problem in classrooms where adults are physically present, what makes anyone think the answer lives entirely in Canberra servers and legislation drafted at speed? It's not an accusation so much as a raised eyebrow, the kind that says, fair dinkum, and in true Aussie parody fashion, that eyebrow deserves its own close-up. Then comes the part where the word inquiry is treated like a forbidden spell. 4 times it's been suggested, 4 times it's been knocked back, and the tone becomes less policy disagreement and more, why won't you even look at it? In satire land, this is where the Senate floor turns into a dance-off, with one side insisting they care deeply about children, while the other side says, great, then let's actually investigate the hard stuff. No villains, no heroes, just a lot of uncomfortable shuffling, and someone quietly checking their notes for the 5th time.
And let's not forget the real star of this parody, the rush. Bills moving faster than a tradie spotting a free snag. Guillotines dropping, debates trimmed, and scrutiny treated like an optional extra. The joke practically tells itself. Democracy, in this telling, isn't broken. It's just being asked to sprint in thongs on hot concrete. You can still technically do it, but everyone's going to be wincing by the end. Bragg's questions hover over the chamber like a drone, not attacking, just observing. Who decides what kids can see? Who decides what's misinformation? Who decides who decides? Penny Wong, unfazed, sits through it all with the patience of someone who's answered 1,000 questions and knows this one will be clipped into a YouTube short by nightfall. And somewhere in the background, the phrase digital ID floats past like a cloud. Everyone interprets differently depending on which side of the fence they're on. The parody tone really leans in when Australia itself gets a mention, not as some abstract policy space, but as a place where people bristle at the idea of being told how to live their lives. Not angrily, just instinctively. The script doesn't need to shout, it just needs to nudge. Australia isn't whatever extreme example anyone wants to compare it to, but it's also not immune to the temptation of tidy solutions to messy problems. That's where the humour sits, right in that tension. Then comes the quiet jab at the idea of transparency. Politicians saying one thing outside Parliament and another thing inside it isn't presented as a scandal here, more like an old family habit everyone pretends not to notice at Christmas. Voters don't always see the votes, the amendments, the procedural shortcuts. In parody form, it's like a magic show where the trick isn't that something disappeared, it's that everyone agreed not to look too closely at how it happened. As the debate rolls on, the questions circle back to first principles. What is government actually for? Economic stability, the rule of law, the Constitution. Simple words, heavy meaning. In this script, those ideas aren't shouted like slogans, they're dropped casually, almost conversationally, which somehow makes them land harder. The joke isn't that anyone's forgotten these principles, it's that they sometimes get buried under paperwork and good intentions moving at warp speed. And that's where the parody finds its closing rhythm, not with a grand accusation or a mic drop, but with that uniquely Australian mix of frustration and dry humour. A reminder that parents don't like feeling sidelined, that scrutiny isn't sabotage, and that democracy works best when it's allowed to breathe. Penny Wong remains composed, Andrew Bragg remains persistent, and Anthony Albanese remains off-stage, his presence felt even in absence. The laugh, in the end, isn't cruel, it's knowing. It's the kind of laugh that says, we see you, Parliament, we're paying attention. And as the chamber empties and the clip heads for the internet, the real punchline lands softly but firmly. Australians don't mind being governed, but they do mind being rushed, talked over, or treated like spectators in their own system. That's not outrage, that's just Australia, raising an eyebrow and asking once more, can we slow down for a sec and actually talk about this?